Hello, welcome to another episode of Arthritis and You, A Joint Journey. Today, we've got something special lined up, so buckle up because it's time for the deep dive. Let's give a warm welcome to our hosts, Arthur and Sarah.
All right, let's dive in. Today we're tackling Sjogren syndrome.
Ooh, interesting.
You sent us some great stuff from Alberta Rheumatology articles and even a video.
Yeah, they got some good resources.
Definitely. Now, I'm thinking you might be interested in this because you or someone you know is dealing with it.
That's right. Yeah.
Dry eyes, dry mouth, those classic Sjogren's things. Or maybe you're just curious about this condition that doesn't get talked about enough.
It's definitely one of those under-the-radar conditions.
It is. And to be clear, we're talking about an autoimmune disorder.
That's right.
The body's immune system basically goes rogue and starts attacking those glands that keep things moist. Tears, saliva, that sort of thing.
Exactly. And while those dry eyes and mouth are the most common symptoms, it can be a lot more than that.
The materials you sent really highlight that. It's not just some dryness. It's like having sandpaper in your eyes.
Oh, yeah.
Constantly sipping water just to swallow food, and even sudden tooth decay.
All things that impact your daily life in a big way.
It's crazy how much we take those basic functions, seeing, eating comfortably, for granted.
We really do. Makes you think.
It does. So, given all these different ways Sjogren's can show up, how common is it actually?
Well, the sources mention it affects about 0.5% to 1% of the population.
Okay, so not super rare.
Not rare, but not as common as some other conditions.
Right, right. Which begs the question, what causes this immune system mayhem in the first place?
Is it a gene? Is it the environment?
Right. Like, is there one thing we can point to and say, that's the culprit?
I wish it were that simple.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, the exact cause of Sjogren's is still a bit of a mystery. Researchers think it's a combo of genetics and environmental triggers, but there's no smoking gun.
So it's more like a perfect storm of factors, which I imagine makes diagnosis a bit tricky, right?
If there's no one test.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No single aha moment.
Exactly. It's like putting a puzzle together.
So how do they even figure out if someone has Sjogren's? What are the pieces of this puzzle?
So rheumatologists, the specialists in these kinds of conditions, they start with your history.
Like, how long have you been dealing with dry eyes? How bad is it?
Yeah, that sort of thing. Then a physical exam.
Checking for swollen glands, I bet.
Bingo! Those are telltale signs.
But I'm guessing they need more than just a chat and a once-over to be sure.
Oh, for sure. Blood tests are crucial. They're looking for specific antibodies, like one called anti-SSA or anti-Rho.
That's a strong indicator if they find it.
It is, yep. But to really get a handle on the dryness, they might do a Schirmer's test.
A Schirmer's test.
It measures tear production, like putting a number to that sandpaper feeling you mentioned.
Interesting.
They might also check your saliva flow, and sometimes, but not always, a biopsy of the salivary gland might be needed.
That sounds a bit more intense.
Yeah, only if the diagnosis is still unclear or they need to rule out other things.
Gotcha. So it's a whole process, for sure. And earlier, you mentioned Sjogren's can affect more than just those moisture-producing glands.
Yeah, it's not always just eyes and mouth.
What are some of the, well, I guess less common, but maybe more serious ways it can impact the body?
Well, remember, it's autoimmune, so in theory, anything's on the table.
Right.
Joint pain and inflammation are a big one, similar to rheumatoid arthritis. Fatigue's super common too, and this might surprise you, but it can even lead to depression and anxiety.
Wow, really? I wouldn't have connected those dots immediately.
It's true, though. Dealing with chronic symptoms and that uncertainty of an autoimmune disease, it takes a toll.
Makes sense. And are there any other, I guess, less frequent but still possible things to watch out for?
Yeah, sometimes you see problems with blood counts, thyroid issues, even things with the GI tract, heart, lungs.
Whoa, so it can really cascade into other problems.
It can, but it's important to remember those are less frequent.
Okay, good to know. But with all these potential issues, is there a way to cure Sjogren's?
Unfortunately, not yet. But there are definitely ways to manage the symptoms and keep things from getting worse.
So what's the typical approach to managing it? Is there like a standard plan, or does it depend on the person?
It's very much tailored to the individual. Depends on which symptoms are bothering them most, whether any organs besides the eyes and mouth are involved.
So each case is unique. Okay, but what about those hallmark dry eye and mouth symptoms? How do they typically handle those?
Well, for dry eyes, over-the-counter artificial tears are usually the first step. But if that's not cutting it, there are prescription drops or even surgery in really severe cases.
Gotcha. And I'm guessing with that dryness, eye infections become a bigger risk.
Definitely. Good hygiene and seeing your eye doctor regularly are crucial.
Makes sense. What about dry mouth? Any go-to strategies for that?
Well, staying hydrated is key. So lots of water throughout the day. Sugar-free gum can help stimulate saliva production, and avoiding sugary drinks is a good idea.
So simple things can make a difference.
They really can. And of course, good dental care becomes even more important.
With all that dry mouth going on, yeah.
Exactly. Regular dental visits are a must to prevent those cavities.
It's fascinating how connected all this is. So lifestyle changes are a good starting point. But what if that's not enough? Are there meds that can help?
There are. One of the most common is hydroxychloroquine, also called Plaquenil.
I know that one from rheumatoid arthritis. Some people swear by it, others say it didn't do much.
Yeah, it's not a cure-all, that's for sure.
So doctors consider that when prescribing it.
Absolutely. It can take 3-6 months to work, and it doesn't help everyone with Sjogren's, especially with the dryness.
Okay, so it's a tool, but not a guarantee. What about those more serious cases with organ involvement? Are there stronger meds for those situations?
There are, yeah, things like methotrexate, azathioprine, rituximab, but those are usually reserved for the more complex cases.
Gotcha. So treatment options really run the gamut. But what about the long-term outlook for someone with Sjogren's? What can they expect as they manage it over time?
Well, while there's no cure, with careful management and the right treatment for their specific needs, people can definitely improve their quality of life.
That's reassuring. But are there any long-term risks associated with Sjogren's itself? Beyond the symptoms we've talked about, I mean.
There are a few things to keep in mind. One is a slightly increased risk of certain cancers, particularly lymphoma.
Oh, wow. So that's something to monitor closely.
Absolutely. Regular checkups and paying attention to any new or unusual symptoms are key.
Early detection is important with any cancer.
You got it. We can get into the specifics of what kind of monitoring to ask for in a bit.
That'd be helpful, yeah.
Yeah.
What about pregnancy? Are there any concerns for women with Sjogren's who are thinking about starting a family?
There can be potential complications like premature birth or the baby developing a heart condition, but with proper care from their doctors, those risks can be managed.
So open communication with the healthcare team is crucial.
Well, it's amazing how much we've already covered about Sjogren's syndrome, and all of this great info, I should mention, comes straight from Alberta Rheumatology.
They really are a fantastic resource. They are. Their website, albertarheumatology.com, and their YouTube channel are packed with info, including those articles and the video you sent in.
Lots to explore there.
Definitely. We'll be sure to include those links in the show notes. But before we move on to part 2, I want to shift gears a bit. We've talked a lot about the physical stuff with Sjogren's, but what about the emotional side?
Ah, the emotional side. That's a big one.
It is. When you're dealing with this day in and day out, that emotional impact can't be ignored.
Absolutely not. It's a lot to carry.
So what are your thoughts on how we can better support those dealing with the daily challenges of Sjogren's? What kind of resources or support systems might be helpful?
That's a great question, and one we should definitely delve into deeper.
All right, let's do it.
Sounds good.
Yeah, it really makes you think about the bigger picture,
It does.
beyond just the physical symptoms.
Right.
When you're dealing with something like Sjogren's every single day, that emotional toll can't be ignored.
No, absolutely not. It's like, imagine that constant struggle. Dry eyes, dry mouth, always feeling wiped out.
And worrying about those potential complications we talked about.
Right, exactly. It all adds up, And then there's the feeling of isolation.
Oh, yeah, that's huge.
Especially if the people around you don't really get it.
Like they don't quite understand what you're going through.
Yeah, exactly. That's why having a good support system is so important.
It's crucial, right? So let's talk about that support system. What are some key things that can really make a difference for someone living with Sjogren's?
Well, first and foremost, that relationship with your healthcare providers.
Your doctors, your nurses.
The whole team, yeah. They're the ones who can help you manage those symptoms, watch out for those potential problems, and answer all those questions you're bound to have.
So having that trusted medical team in your corner is a good starting point.
It's essential. But support goes beyond just the doctor's office, of course.
Of course.
Connecting with others who truly get it.
People who are going through the same thing.
Exactly. That can be so powerful. Support groups, online or in person, they provide that safe space.
To share experiences, swap coping strategies.
And just feel less alone,
I bet. Just knowing you're not the only one battling this thing.
Right. And you can pick up tips and tricks from each other, share what works, what doesn't.
It's that shared understanding, right?
It is. Those connections can be a lifeline, especially when things get tough.
When you're feeling overwhelmed, discouraged.
Exactly. You mentioned online support groups, which I think are amazing these days.
Oh, totally. It's not always easy to get out there and meet in person.
Yeah, and online forums and social media groups, they can connect people from all over.
Distance doesn't matter anymore.
Exactly. And beyond personal connections, there are also organizations dedicated to Sjogrens.
Like national groups and such.
Yeah, the Sjogren's Syndrome Foundation, for example. They're a great resource, tons of information, and they advocate for those with the condition.
So you've got support on all these different levels, medical, emotional, informational. It's reassuring.
It is. And don't forget about self-care.
Ah, yes. That's so important, but so easy to neglect.
It is. Getting enough sleep, eating well, managing stress. They might seem basic.
But they make a huge difference.
They do, especially when you're dealing with a chronic illness like Sjogren's.
Because fatigue is already a factor, right?
Exactly. So taking care of those basics is even more important.
It's all connected. And I guess it's important to remember that Sjogren's is a marathon, not a sprint.
That's a good way to put it.
There will be good days, bad days, times when you feel like you've got it under control, and times when it feels like it's all too much.
Right. And that unpredictability can be tough.
I bet.
So be kind to yourself, Acknowledge those ups and downs. And don't be afraid to reach out for support when you need it. Your healthcare team, support groups, loved ones, they're there for you.
It's a reminder that it's okay to ask for help.
Exactly. And I think one last thing I want to emphasize is being your own advocate when it comes to your health.
Being your own advocate, what do you mean by that?
It means staying informed about your condition, asking questions, making sure your voice is heard. Don't be afraid to speak up if something doesn't feel right, if you're not getting the answers you need.
So taking an active role, not just passively going along with whatever is suggested.
Yes. You are the expert on your own body, on your own experience. Doctors are awesome partners, but you have the right, the responsibility to advocate for yourself.
Such an important point. And it really speaks to what we try to do here on the Deep Dive, empowering you, the listener, to navigate these complex topics. Speaking of you, the listener, what stood out to you so far in our discussion about Sjogren's? What resonated? What new insights have you gained? And maybe even more important, what questions are still swirling around in your mind? We've covered a lot, right?
We have, from those common symptoms to the less frequent ones, the diagnosis, the treatment, the emotional side of things.
The importance of support, self-care.
It's a lot to digest.
It is. And before we wrap up this part, let's circle back to something you mentioned earlier, that increased risk of lymphoma with Sjogren's.
Yeah, that's a big one.
It is. We should probably give our listeners some more concrete info on what that actually means and what they should be watching out for.
For sure. So when we talk about lymphoma in this context, we're mainly talking about non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Okay, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Right. The overall risk is still relatively low, but it is higher for people with Sjogren's.
So awareness is key. What are some signs and symptoms of lymphoma that someone with Sjogren's should be on the lookout for?
So some common ones include painless swelling of the lymph nodes.
Those are usually in the neck, armpits, groin, right?
Right. And also unexplained fever, night sweats, unintended weight loss, that kind of thing. And persistent fatigue.
Which can be tricky
Yeah,
because fatigue is already a common Sjogren's symptom,
Yeah.
right?
It is. And remember, these symptoms can be caused by all sorts of things, not just lymphoma. But if you're experiencing any of them, it's always a good idea to get checked out by your doctor just to be safe.
Better safe than sorry, for sure. So early detection is crucial. What about specific monitoring for lymphoma in people with Sjogren's? What should they be doing to stay on top of things?
Well, regular checkups with your rheumatologist are a must. They'll keep an eye on your overall health, your blood work, watch for any red flags.
So open communication and staying proactive are key. And those support systems we talked about earlier, support groups, online communities, they could be helpful for sharing info and experiences related to lymphoma too, right?
Absolutely. Connecting with others who've been there can be invaluable.
Finding those sources of support and information is so important. It's about feeling empowered to make those informed decisions about your health.
Right, exactly. And remember, you're not alone in this journey.
There are resources, there are people who understand, and there are strategies to help you manage the challenges and live well with Sjogren's.
And for more info, don't forget about those resources from Alberta Rheumatology. Their website and YouTube channel are great starting points.
Excellent. We'll include those links in the show notes. As we wrap up this part of our deep dive into Sjogren's, I'm struck by something.
Oh, what's that?
Well, we focused a lot on the science, the symptoms, the treatment, all important stuff, obviously.
Of course.
But what about the human stories behind Sjogren's?
Yes. The personal side of things.
Right. I'm thinking about the individuals living with this condition every day,
Navigating those complexities.
finding ways to adapt and thrive despite the challenges.
You know, it's amazing how resilient the human spirit can be.
It really is. So I encourage you, the listener, to go beyond the medical facts and seek out those stories. Read blogs, listen to podcasts, connect with others in the Sjogren's community. Because in those stories, you'll find inspiration, you'll find empathy, you'll find a deeper understanding of what it truly means to live with this condition.
And you might even discover your own strength and resilience along the way.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah,
Those stories really can be powerful.
they are.
It's like they give you a whole different perspective,
Yeah, a glimpse into that day-to-day reality.
what it's actually like to live with this condition.
The challenges, the little victories.
It reminds you that there's a person behind the diagnosis,
Absolutely, each with their own unique experience.
And it can be so inspiring.
You see how people adapt.
How they cope, how they find ways to thrive.
Despite all the obstacles.
Exactly. So if you're ever feeling overwhelmed or just discouraged,
Yeah.
remember that you're not alone,
There are others who've been there.
who've walked a similar path and come out stronger on the other side.
And their stories can give you hope.
Encouragement, even practical tips.
For navigating your own journey.
And who knows, maybe someday you'll be the one sharing your story,
Yeah.
offering that same support and inspiration to someone else.
It's all about paying it forward.
It is.
Yeah.
Creating that ripple effect of empathy and understanding.
Reminding each other that we're not alone in this.
Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive into Sjogren syndrome.
Sounds good.
We've covered a lot today.
We have.
They started by breaking down the basics of Sjogren's, those classic dry eye and mouth symptoms.
And then we got into the nitty-gritty of diagnosis and treatment.
Talked about those less common but potentially more serious ways it could affect the body.
Highlighting how important it is to stay on top of things.
Regular checkups, open communication with your healthcare team.
And of course, we couldn't forget about the emotional side of it all.
The importance of building a strong support system, taking care of yourself.
Connecting with others who understand.
It's a complex condition that requires, a complex approach to manage it.
But with the right knowledge, support, and mindset.
It's definitely possible to live well with Sjogren's.
It is. And remember, this deep dive was just a starting point.
There's so much more to learn out there.
Those resources from Alberta Rheumatology are a great place to begin, and we'll include those links in the show notes.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for joining us on this journey of discovery.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you found it informative and empowering.
And until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and take good care of yourselves.
See you next time.
This has been another episode of Arthritis and You, A Joint Journey, brought to you by the Rheum team from albertarheumatology.com, your trusted evidence-based suite of resources available 24/7. Straight from Alberta, but for folks around the world. Our hosts today, Arthritis and Sarah Upis, technical producer, John Ifun, and our executive producer, Stephen Kintz. While we work hard to maintain the accuracy of our information, we accept no legal responsibility for any errors or omissions. Remember, always check with your own physician first. Join us next time for another Deep Dive.